Good morning. It's Linda with No Frills ASMR. I woke up this morning with a song absolutely stuck in my head. And this same song has been swirling around in my head for 2 days. I'll back up just a little bit. One of my son's birthdays is coming up. And he is, well, I won't get into, but he likes record albums, and he's got a very, like the kind of music he likes is sort of stuff I wouldn't be able to find or figure out because it's very indie and atmospheric kind of music. And so I was thinking of music from my, teen years that's like that. And I got in my head the Primitives. If you guys are familiar with them, they have a song called Crash. And I had that whole album. I was sort of obsessed. And so I thought today I'd go out and look and see if I can find the Primitives album to get for him for his birthday. So that led me down. I'm telling you how I got to this. On Spotify, I was listening to the Primitives. By the way, still great. Go listen to Crash and the whole album. Which then brought up a playlist that played the song. Nothing compares to you by Sinead O'Connor. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, I love this song. And it has been stuck in my head for 2 days. And I'm not a good enough singer to sing it, which is a bummer because I'd love to be able to sing it, but I have to just act it out. Anyway, so I woke up this morning with this in my head, and it really, you know how sometimes a song gets stuck in your head? Like one time that one about Cuba. Anyway, whatever. I don't want to get it in my head right now. I can't think of it, so forget it. But some songs stick in your head, and you're like, I gotta get this out of my head. But this one, I woke up feeling so happy singing it. And I went down and had a couple cups of coffee, 3, which is why I'm a little jittery. And I was thinking about the song, and I remembered that Prince did the original version of it. And then I got sad because I remembered that Sinead and Prince are both dead now, R.I.P. But that led me down a whole different thing, Google search, rabbit hole is the word I was looking for, about songs that are covers, where the cover version is more famous than the original recording. And I would say this is probably one of the big ones, is Nothing Compares to You, because almost everybody knows about Sinead O'Connor's version, which is beautiful and wonderful. But originally, Prince wrote it and recorded it. And you can find his version on YouTube, and it is also excellent. They're just both good. But I do think there's something about a woman singing this song that gives it a little bit more interest and power for me. But one thing I want to say about all these covers that you might know, I don't feel the need to really compare them as one is better than the other. They're just different. Like there is a cover song of Elvis Presley, and not Elvis Presley didn't really write, I don't know if he wrote any of his own music, I'm not sure, but the song Hound Dog that everybody knows because of Elvis Presley. There was a version the original is by an artist named Big Mama Thornton. And I love her version. And part of me is like, this is better. But it might be just because I've heard Hound Dog so many times, that like you're kind of like, it's fun to hear a different version. But it's like Elvis's version is sort of like white boy rock and roll, and Big Mama Thornton's like big beautiful black woman bluesy kind of version. So they're very different. I shouldn't say they're very different. You can tell Elvis was inspired by her version. I read that somebody after Elvis died went to Big Mama Thornton and said, how do you feel about the fact that Elvis made millions off your song and you only got $100 for it? Because apparently they paid her $100. And she said, well, I'm still here to spend my $100. I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, so that's another one, Hound Dog. Another Elvis one that, everybody knows is Blue Suede Shoes. Uh-oh, my spine's suede right. I think that's right. Which everybody knows Elvis's version, but it was originally recorded by Carl Perkins before Elvis. But those are definitely some. Okay, let's think. This is kind of a funny one that maybe, I don't know if you guys will know it, either version. But there is a song called Lost in the Supermarket. Uh-oh, I'm not going to be able to fit it. Anyway, and it apparently was on a kids' movie soundtrack called Over the Hedge. And we were at my sister's house, and my niece, who probably at the time was, 13 or so, she used to make me mix tapes. Honestly, I can't remember if they were cassettes or CDs. They must have been CDs, right? Anyway, she would make me mix tapes. And she was like, you have to hear this song. It's so good. And she puts on Lost in the Supermarket by Ben Folds. And I'm listening. I'm like, oh my, I love this song. You need to hear this version. And so I pull out, we were on the computer. This was back when you had to go out. I forget how you did it. You went on the computer somehow. And played her the Clash original version of Lost in the Supermarket, which actually isn't on Combat Rock, but this is the album I happen to have here. And the funny thing is, she was young and, didn't know anything. And she goes, well, I like the original better. And I'm like, I know, right? It's better. And she's like, no, the original, because she's thinking like the Ben Folds version's the original and that the Clash had copied it. And we're like, no. The Clash is the original. So anyway, the Clash recorded Lost in the Supermarket in 1979. And I love that song. But I will say, the Ben Folds version that was recorded for Over the Hedge is a really good version too. So I'm not taking anything away from that version. But I think sometimes the one that you know and love from your youth is the version. Anyway, yeah, so that's one. But I don't know if that quite qualifies for like the cover is more well known. Another one that I don't know how it quite fits in, but I remember the song, why am I using up so much space on my cards? I'll try to write it smaller. Landslide. Now, Landslide's a famous song by Stevie Nicks. But I remember one time, I think it was my niece, but I can't remember. It might have been the same niece. was like, I love that song by Dixie Chicks. Well, the Chicks, Natalie Maines. And my sister and I are like, well, that's a Stevie Nicks song. No, that's Natalie Maines. So sometimes it's just, you can't expect a 13-year-old to know the other version, but I don't know that it's an example of the cover being more famous. It's just like depends on what time period you're from. Because I would say the original is the famous version, but without a doubt, the sort of slightly countrified Chicks version is awesome. All right, hold on. I gotta clear my throat. All right, here's one. I know one. I have two things here. I have this album just so we can see Bob Dylan's face, but I don't think it's on here. No. All right. Anybody have a guess which Bob Dylan song? The cover is more famous. There are probably a lot of them with Bob Dylan because he was a giant songwriter, but a very well-known. The Watchtower. I'm trying to fit it. So Bob Dylan wrote and performed the song All Along the Watchtower. And in his version, it's real heavy on harmonica. And then Jimi Hendrix recorded a version where he kind of changed out the harmonica for, electric guitar. And I listened to both this morning. And again, they're both like Bob Dylan's is more folksy and Jimi Hendrix is more acid rock kind of feel to it. I like the Jimi Hendrix version better, personally. But they're both good. But yeah, it was originally Bob Dylan wrote and recorded it. So there's that. What's kind of interesting about the Jimi Hendrix version is when you listen to it, his voice sounds so mature. Like if you just close your eyes, you'd picture a grown man. And he recorded it in what year was it? Like 67, I think. No, it was earlier than that. He sang it. Didn't he do it at Woodstock? I think, Jimi Hendrix, there's a whole story. I'll have to do a video on Woodstock maybe. But like, at the last minute, they kind of put him in as I forget the story, somebody backed out or something. Anyway, and that's kind of where he got a lot of attention. But what I was going to say, his voice sounds so mature. You would think it's a 40-year-old man. But he died when he was 27. Jimi Hendrix did. Anyway, okay, so that's another one. One that I didn't know about until this morning is the 1980s huge hit song that has remained with us. You hear it everywhere all the time. I hear it at Trader Joe's all the time. And that is a song by Soft Cell. Well, recorded. Tainted Love. All right, so Soft Cell made this song a gigantic hit in 1961. However, it was written by a guy named Ed Cobb and recorded in 1964 by Gloria Jones. And I went and listened to this Gloria Jones version, and it has sort of like, I want to say a Motown kind of sound to it. And it's good. I liked it a lot. So that's an interesting one. Gloria Jones. Look it up. So she recorded hers in 64. So like 17 years before UB40 recorded Soft Cell. Well, UB40 brings us to something else. UB40 is known for their song Red. Red Red Wine was such a hit when I was in high school. I have such clear memories of filling my tank up with gas and this guy who I was sort of with at the time happened to pull up and he turned it on so loud, just like get my attention, and then he was like acting out the whole anyway, but Red Red Wine was by UB40 in the 1980s, but it was originally, they did like this reggae version. If you're not familiar with it, you look up UB40 Red Red Wine. So in 1983 their version came out, but in 1967 Neil Diamond wrote and performed the original version of Red Red Wine. And Neil Diamond, he was a huge, musician presence, but he also wrote songs for a lot of people. But this one he happened to have recorded a version of, and then they did a cover. He also wrote, what's that monkey song? I'm a Believer. But Neil Diamond never actually recorded that before. He wrote it for the Monkees. But Red Red Wine. Okay. That's a good one. Oh, here's one. Here's one I wrote down that I hadn't ever heard this before until today. This is a song by Cyndi Lauper. Cyndi Lauper, who I love. The song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun. Girls Just. So Cyndi Lauper in the 80s had a huge hit. I think it was her first hit with Girls Just Want to Have Fun. And it's such a great, like, the video is kind of her pushing back on her dad and, the men in her life, and just like, girls just want to have fun. We don't need to, I know, it's just a great little girl song. But apparently it was originally written and sung by a guy named Robert Hazard. Let me double check that. Yeah, Robert Hazard. And so I did go on YouTube and watched his version, and it's interesting because it's actually really similar. Even the whole sound of it he was sort of new wave, I assume. I'm not familiar with him, but yeah, that was interesting. So that was originally a man sang that song. I had no idea. That was news to me. What did I do along the Watchtower? I know. Okay, this one. Speaking of girl power songs. This one I didn't know either. I Love Rock and Roll, which is a power ballad rock and roll hit. Not ballad, but just song by Joan Jett. Which I'm going to say that came out in the early 80s. I didn't look up the date. It had to be the early to mid 80s. Joan Jett had the huge hit with I Love Rock and Roll. I love rock and roll. And I didn't know, but it was originally recorded in 1970s by a group called the Arrows, which was kind of like glam rock. And it was written and sung by Alan Merrill. What? So it was a dude. But Joan Jett, man, she killed that song. And then there were versions by Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus. But yeah, originally it was this Alan Merrill. I listened to his version. It was good. So this one I feel like everybody knows already, but you never know. Because sometimes stuff that I feel like everybody knows, not everybody knows. And that is the song by Miss Whitney Houston. I will always love you. This song, when Whitney Houston sings a song, if it doesn't bring a tear to your eye, You're Made Out of Stone. It is so good. She sang it for the soundtrack for The Bodyguard. It was a movie with, what's his name? I'm blanking his name right now. You guys know. Somebody in the comments. Throw his name there. Oh, God. Oh, my gosh. I'm totally... It'll come to me. All right, whatever. So, Whitney Houston performed I Will Always Love You. Amazing. Also, if you're not familiar with Whitney Houston, go look up when she sang the national anthem. So good. Anyway, but that song was originally written and recorded by Dolly Parton, and I think kind of a minor hit for Dolly Parton. But Kevin Costner, oh my God, thank you. Kevin Costner, I think it was him, because he was like a producer, maybe a director on the movie The Bodyguard. And he went to Dolly Parton and asked, if they could use the song. Boy, now I forget the whole story, but it was like the final chorus of the song. I'm trying to remember. Dolly talks it. I think that, and then they had Whitney sing it. Boy, it's all fuzzy now. I don't remember the whole story. Anyway, whatever. So it was originally Dolly Parton, but Whitney Houston did the cover that everybody knows, and it's so good. And by the way, Dolly Parton's version is also very good, but Whitney Houston knocks that thing out of the park. All right, what have I done? Let's see. Oh, you know which one I know this is kind of interesting. Okay, this is a Johnny Cash song that everybody knows. Ring of Fire. And apparently, Ring of Fire was originally recorded by Anita Carter, who is June Carter Cash's sister. So June Cash, June Carter, from the Carter family, if you're familiar. But anyway, June Carter Cash wrote the song before her and Johnny Cash were together. So they were on the road together, and but June and Merle Kilgore wrote the song Ring of Fire, and June wrote it about how she knew Johnny Cash was not good for her, and he was doing a lot of drugs and pill popping and partying, and yet she still had like a love for him. And at the time, he was still married to his first wife. So anyway, she wrote the song with Merle Kilgore and then had her sister Anita record it. And you can listen to that. And then like a year later, Johnny Cash recorded his version of it. But what was kind of interesting, I read I don't know what it was, something I Googled. And Johnny's first wife, Vivian, claims that Johnny came to her and said, I wrote this new song and I'm recording it, but I'm going to give writing credit to June. And Vivian didn't like June at all because Johnny was with her all the time. And this is right before they got divorced, I think. And and by the way, Vivian was probably right to not trust it. But anyway, and Vivian claims that Johnny said, I'm going to give her writing credit, even though I wrote it. And Vivian said, why? And he said, because she really needs the money. And so Vivian says, for years I've heard June talk about how she wrote that song, and really he wrote it and she's lying and all this stuff. But I don't know, because Anita Carter recorded it, a version of it, before Johnny ever did. So that was kind of an interesting story. there's so many. You could do this all day, probably. Well, let's do... I don't know, that one's not that interesting. Well, there's the song by Led Zeppelin. Dazed and confused. And Led Zeppelin, when what's his name? When the Yardbirds were touring the U.S., they heard a guy named Jake Holmes singing Dazed and Confused. And Jake Holmes recorded a version of it in 1967. You can find that on YouTube. Jake Holmes, just look it up. And by the way, listened, loved it. I thought it was good. There's something about that, like, raw rock and roll without having any timing correction, pitch correction. It's just what it is. It's so good. It makes your makes your heart beat a little bit. So yeah, go listen to Dazed and Confused by Jake Holmes. But apparently, I'm having trouble pulling the name of the lead singer of Led Zeppelin right now. But anyway, the Yardbirds are touring. He hears the song and starts playing it with the Yardbirds. And then when the Yardbirds break up and he starts Led Zeppelin, he took Dazed and Confused song over to Led Zeppelin. And they ended up having a huge hit. And P.S., that also is a phenomenal, awesome song. Both versions. But I don't know that they ever gave credit to Dave Holmes. That's a comedian. Jake Holmes. Jake Holmes. I don't know that there was ever credit given, and that's a problem. But both versions are excellent. Like rock and roll, similar. Kind of similar to each other, I guess. I don't know. I think Jake Holmes' version's a little more like folk rock, while Led Zeppelin's might be a little more like acid rock, maybe, if you want to call it that. I don't know. But they're both good. But yeah, I don't know that proper credit was given them that. Anyway, I don't know if I can... I'll have to come back and do some more. I mean, I do have, like, Twist and Shout that a lot of us know from the... I mean, we know it from everything, but it was on the Ferris Bueller soundtrack. And so that version on Ferris Bueller was the Beatles version. And so a lot of people think of it as a Beatles song. But then a lot of us know, it was around before that. It was a Isley Brothers song. But kind of interesting, the original recording was in 1961 by a group called the Top Notes. So theirs was the original recording. So a lot of people say, oh, that's not a Beatles, it's a cover of an Isley Brothers. But really, the Isley Brothers were a cover of the Top Notes. And since then, there's been like Salt and Pepper did a version. I don't know how many versions of Twist and Shout there are. A ton of versions, I'm sure. But yeah, that was a good one. I don't know, in the comments if you have other, like, covers nobody knows is a cover. Let me know, and maybe I'll do another video if I think of more. Alright guys, talk to you soon. Landslide. All along the watchtower. Tainted love. Red wine. Girls just wanna Businessmen, they drink my wine. Plowmen dig my earth. None of them along the line know what any of it's worth. No reason to get excited, the thief kindly spoke.